Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mixtape, the place to be for virtually connected experiences highlighting creatives of color. I'm your host, DJ April Hunt. You are now about to join Mix and Fade, an unedited conversation over drinks that I had with the amazing contemporary artist Wardell Milan, the physically investigative artist Zachary Ty Richardson, and writer, producer extraordinaire Jewels Dodson. Enjoy. Happy Juneteenth, y'all.
Hey.
Hey. So, first off, what y'all drinking?
I'm drinking some mezcal.
Ooh.
Nice.
Ooh, what's that on the rim, Zachary? Salt or sugar?
Salt.
Okay.
I feel like I was gonna get a little salty tonight. It's just a classic margarita, something low key.
It looks very professional. It looks like real mixology skills over there.
I try my best.
I see. Jules, are you staying dry? What's going on? You drinking water?
Yeah, like I'm not drinking anything. I was gonna cook.
Yeah. We have to eat.
So I have some chicken in my drink.
I'm drinking milk tonight.
So
why is that straw so big?
I'm talking about drinking.
Looks like a carrot. Looks like you're sipping out of a carrot.
It looks like one of those like big drinks that you get like at amusement.
Yes, I was trying to give y'all a lavish moment on screen. Okay, you guys, for everyone who's watching out in the world, I wanted to give you a whole moment in this cocktail.
You're giving us a moment.
With a cat.
It's very
carrot. So, how have you guys been doing? How have y'all been navigating this crazy, redefined world that we're living in? What's it be on just creating and existing and surviving?
Yeah, I never stopped really coming into the studio, even if it was just for a few hours, just to get out of my apartment and to move around, because I feel like for those first couple of weeks of us being in lockdown, I wasn't really being mobile, and I kind of felt like my body was kind of like shriveling up in a certain kind of way. I know it sounds terrible.
No,
but
I can relate.
But coming to the studio, like getting on the train as perhaps precarious and unsafe as it was at the beginning of all of this. But getting on the train and like having to commute and getting out of my apartment was mentally was very helpful.
Yeah. Zach, how have you been? What have you been up to? Like, how have you been navigating this increasingly, new space that we're in?
Yeah, I just felt like my body was starting to soften, which is like new for my body type. I'm enjoying the softness, but it has forced me to create some type of routine. It actually feels like I used to work on cruise ships, and I was a performer on cruise ships, and like it reminds me of like my lifestyle on the ship, because I had like so much consistency in my life with like no really like distractions from like partying or just being out and about or like normal things that you do from day to day. It was just I was stuck on a ship. I did my shows at night, and then I would have all day to just like do anything I wanted. So I was really like consistent with my routine. So this last 2 to 3 weeks with everything going on, I've like really established like my routine with like working out, devoting time to practice, my work in this little confined space that I'm in. And yeah, just trying to get this body right.
Mm-hmm.
Like the hardest thing at first was trying to establish a routine, because I was still trying to maintain my routine before all of this happened. And even in the last 2 weeks, like still trying to maintain routine that I established like a month into the shutdown, and then that routine being disrupted by like the protests and demonstrations and wanting to be involved in that in those demonstrations and in those calls in some sort of kind of way. So it feels like we've been on this. This time has been like a year. I feel like it's like so long, but also so short. It's such a weird type of space, liminal space that we are in.
It has been long, right? Like, I feel like the last time I saw like a mass of folks at like an art function was in early March. That was like a whole different season, basically.
But it was really only, what, 3 months ago?
Yeah.
March, April, May?
March, April, May, June. So going into the 4th month.
Yeah. So it's really not that long, but it seems like such a extremely long time we've been dealing with this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like no distractions. I feel like you're really faced with whoever or whatever you like live with. Like in my instance, I have roommates, and it's like it feels like I've known one of my roommates moved in literally March 1st. So I feel like I know her more than I've known like any other roommate now, because we've spent every day like quality time together without any distractions outside life. You know, it just, and that's how it was on the ship too. Like you would be on there for like 7-8 months, but it feels like 5 years with those people. You know them so well.
Right.
So it's just interesting how it's like all played out with just establishing like new relationships that I never had with these people that I live with. It's pretty remarkable, and I'm really grateful that I like them.
Hey, like, how is that? That's so important, you know? Like, just the thought of being trapped with someone that you don't want to be trapped with at a time like this.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that I know there's probably so many people that are in living situations that are not necessarily healthy for them mentally. So I'm really grateful to love my roommates. That's one thing I really am grateful for, honestly.
And Miss Jewels up in the Bronx, what is that giving? How are you feeling? How are you doing?
I live alone, so I've had a lot of quality time with myself.
Yeah.
I used to think that I was like an ambivert, you know, like people really, because people ambivert, like a little intro and a little extrovert, you know.
Sure.
People see me and they're like, oh, she's an extrovert. Yeah, but when I really do love being at home alone. Like that gives me a very real joy. But then this solidified that I am an extrovert.
Right.
I'm an extrovert that likes to be at home alone sometimes, but because I found that there were definitely days when if I didn't have any human contact, I just got so depressed. I got so gray. It was like the end of the world.
Right.
So I made a point that I needed to make contact, even if it's just a phone call, like a 20-minute phone call. That would kind of, it would like rev me back up. I was like, that's an extrovert. Yeah. So a lot of that, a lot of journal writing. People be like, you got to heal yourself. You're like, I spent a lot of time doing stuff like that.
Right.
So much time healing myself.
It was, like it was good for what it was. It definitely made me think about like partnership more, and like babies and family, and like I had a birthday in the pandemic, which was very like lame.
Yeah.
So did April.
I did, yeah. It's like it really pushes you to get very creative with how to just celebrate your born day. You know?
Yeah.
I don't know, yeah. This is definitely like the self-healing marathon of all marathons.
Yeah, I would have to agree.
I mean, but I feel like that is, I don't know, there's obviously I don't want to dismiss the tragedy that is happening all around us, but I have been finding some silver linings for myself, pushing myself creatively outside of the box and just pushing myself to be out of my comfort zone. Even this right now, like what we're doing, like this is not my comfort zone. Like this is like challenging myself to get in front of a camera, when typically like I'm way behind, which is my sort of safe space. So, I mean, how do you guys feel about that? Do you feel like it's pushed you in any way to get out of your comfort zone or just challenge you to kind of think differently in your artistic practice or just your life practice?
I personally feel like, being a performance artist, movement-based performance artist or whatever, I am constantly communicating like through my body. My practice is like an embodied practice. So yes, this is definitely, I can agree with you, April, it's like out of my comfort zone. I've been constantly pushed to have these types of conversations whether it's like virtually or writing, like with interviews and stuff like that. Because I'm more comfortable using my body as a vehicle for these types of conversations. But I think it's so like healthy to actually speak these things into existence. Yeah, so it's definitely been pushing me in that way with my practice for sure.
Yeah. I think the last 2-3 weeks, and just with all the with the demonstrations and the social and cultural unrest, like that, thinking about how to respond to what we are seeing and feeling, and how to respond to that outside the studio, like not as an artist, but as like a citizen of the globe, a citizen of New York, a citizen of the brown queer community. That is really challenged me to think about how to exist or how to move past certain comfort zones that I've had or have for myself. Because I keep thinking like after all of the cheerleading and the championing for Black Lives Matter, for queer and trans lives, for defunding the police, for whatever placard or postcard someone is holding up and shouting about or against. Like once all that celebration, all that championing is over, then what are we left with? So what happens in 3 to 6 months? So I kind of think about that and what is my role like beyond the present, and how do I contribute to in a substantial, significant way to these causes that we are really speaking about and protesting and screaming about now. How do I speak about that and contribute in a non-art form way? Because it's easy for me to figure out or to consider how do I want to express these things or how do I want to protest as an artist and with the artwork. But as Wardell outside the studio, what does that mean? So that's definitely caused me or making me consider like how to exist outside of my own comfort zone and perimeters.
Yeah, and like just like advocacy outside of my practice,
right?
Basically, right? Like, where do I fit in that equation? Like, It's been really interesting reflection for me.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if I just have an answer yet. Do you have an answer? Do you guys have an answer for yourselves? I don't have an answer for myself yet.
I'm in a similar place, but I kind of feel like the same a little bit like you. Like I'm always, my work inherently is about giving voice and light to people in the shadows, narratives being pushed into the shadows. Like that's what I do all the time. So not to let myself off the hook per se, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I had a few ideas that I was thinking about, like an initiative or a thing, but that gives me a lot of anxiety. It makes me nervous.
I'm thinking like because so many of us are creatives, and a number of us are introverts. like how can we come together and create like our own coalition to create like one large mass or one large voice of creatives that would then go out and speak for, you know, some of these other causes or our initiatives or injustices that we want to battle. Because some people don't know or don't want to be a singular voice in a demonstration. They want to be a part of a collective.
I think
what that looks like, huh?
I feel like you have to, I mean, this is what I'm learning for myself, and this is definitely like a work in progress, you know, and just understanding what you're called to and what you're not called to and what you're comfortable with, right? Because
I am not called to get arrested.
Child, listen, yeah.
And
Precious
like,
Kelvin are not. Yeah. No, it's true. But also it's like, we're trying to, like, the thing is like, we're Black, you know? So it's just like, we are affected by this too. So it's almost like this like double consciousness of like, you want to react obviously, and you want to be part of the movement. It's so critical, but then you also have to kind of like maintain your sanity.
Sure.
Because this is really, I mean, I don't know about y'all, but just following these headlines, and I haven't even been following them in any means aggressively, just because I know myself, and I'm a tender touch at times. So I'm like, okay, girl, you know, you need to like kind of put that down. But from the little that I've been sort of following, it's just been it's been a lot, you know? So there's like a certain level of just a balance between like self-preserving and just maintaining, and then also just kind of finding your lane as it relates to how you're going to respond and how you're going to contribute to this movement, which cannot just be a trend, right? Like what you were saying, Wardell, like all these folks and all these institutions who were not here for this movement really before are all kind of like waving their like sort of flags, because it's
sending out press releases.
It's very like, you know, on trend, on brand of the zeitgeist right now to do that. But it's like, okay, where were you like 2 months ago even?
Right.
Like, so right. It's just a lot to process. But I think you just have to figure out your way of what your contribution is going to look like without pressure, and just stepping into it in the way that feels comfortable and that resonates with you.
Yeah, I agree. Mm-hmm. But thinking about like consciousness, like, because all four of us, there's always that, you know, people always say folks of color, they have double consciousness. But I would say like the four of us, we have like 3 or 4 consciousness, because we are people of color, you two are female, Zach and I are queer, and then we just have the conscious. So it's like, it's fucking exhausting to shift between the 3 on a constant, daily, hourly basis.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's about like mental health and how do you, as you were saying, April, like how do you tap in and gain information and to remain like informed, and also to remain an advocate and a demonstrator. And I say demonstrate, like I'm not going to a rally because I got way too much fucking aggression. I don't need to be anywhere.
Yeah.
That aggression cannot be like controlled or tamed.
Yeah.
But it's like, how do you your demonstration, whatever that looks like, it's like, how do you remain kind of authentic and true to that, and sane, and then also supported to the larger cause.
Yeah.
One of the things for me that I have been kind of like struggling and like working on, and I have to keep the social media at a healthy distance, is not becoming jaded.
Yeah.
Becoming really, really salty about everything and like bitter. And I'm not saying that anger is not allowed and that it can be a great fuel. You know, it is time to be very angry. But I just think you have to be careful. That can be a slippery slope. And I know my pastor used to say, anger can visit, but it can't stay.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think about it like that. You feel salty for a few hours in the day, and then you're like, I am like, okay, dust myself off, dust that salt off.
Yeah.
And, remain true to who I am, which is somebody who's fairly optimistic, right? And just try to keep that also intact and in play as much as you can keep the anger and fury in play,
Yeah, I've been like trying to figure out ways of redirecting my anger and using it in my practice. But also, I feel like, protesting obviously is not enough. I feel like it's helped me personally with my anxiety around everything. And just like keeping this conversation going about privileges, I feel like I'm privileged being like a light-skinned person. So I feel like it necessary to be out there. But I also have just been reevaluating how like I'm in somewhat of a bubble being in New York. I've, heard conversations and just saw different things with people in more like in the South, say where I'm from. I'm like, I don't know if I actually would be comfortable protesting in my own hometown. Especially like looking at the videos and just seeing the people there, like a lot of trans and queer people feel like their life is more so endangered protesting with a lot of cis Black people that perhaps do not accept them. And so I'm just like, wow, like just like reevaluating the whole thing about me, having the courage to do that here. And then like seeing like, what if I didn't live here? What would my voice look like in a place that perhaps I might be terrified to do this, especially when you see all these videos of, queer and trans people, especially being like abused by a lot of Black cis men. I just feel like there's a lot of work that we have to do internally in our own communities. And that goes past protesting, you know what I mean? Like it just, I guess it just comes down to us having these types of conversations and more of them. Not just here, but like in the places that actually really need it. You know what I mean?
I will say I have to concur with Zachary, because I'm a native New Yorker and I'm the child of immigrants. So like I live in a very different universe than much of the world. And when I go on social, and there's all these videos of people, at the Walmart saying crazy, like I have to say I'm a little naive, and that like I'm floored that people feel that way, and then doubly would even like let it come out their mouth, like in front of a camera or like in front of people, right? Like maybe you feel that way in like your internal life. I don't know if that even makes a difference. But the fact that you would like wear it on your sleeve, so I get like, I'm a little wet behind the ears for that kind of thing. I'm like, what? Because like liberal New York City, people, even though people do feel that way here, let's not get crazy, they would never let it come out their mouth.
Right.
So,
it's just amazing to me how like this Black Lives Matter movement is so incomprehensible to so many people, and it's just still falling deaf ears. You know what I mean? Like even like all this noise is still not enough. You know what I mean? Like
Still not.
especially you have to really realize where you live and their surroundings, and then where other people live. It's just not the same at all.
Yeah. I'm a little naive in that way. Like there's things. It's sometimes good for me to watch it too, because it's difficult for me on the other side of that coin to understand somebody else's life. Like, there's no subway system. There's no nearest hospital. The nearest hospital might be 30 or 40 miles off, like all that stuff. I really do, as a city dweller, I take that stuff for granted. And it's also very insightful when I hear someone else's narrative where they live in the deep South and there's all these different issues that don't even occur to me. You know what I mean? Like I have to get checked on it, because I'm like, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. We gotta check each other, you know, it's so important. And yeah, Zach, what you were saying about just like internally having these conversations, especially as it relates to queer folk, particularly trans. I mean, trans Black women have been getting killed left and right. Just like, it is literally mind-boggling.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's like, unless we collectively, I mean, I'm talking in the context of Black folks in particular right now, like we can't not include everyone at this point, you know? It's just like, it's such a loss not to kind of like really think collectively, no matter what your gender is, what your sexuality is. It's just like, at the end of the day, we're all Black, we're all brown. We have to come together because it's literally life or death, you know? So yeah, that's really important.
I often wonder, like, and maybe I give these people too much mental thought. Like, what is it about the attacker who attacks like a trans woman? What is it about themselves that they dislike so much that they have to be that violent to the other? I just don't understand it. Like,
It's insecurities, toxic masculinity,
Yeah.
like,
but it's
all
kind
that,
of
like, really plays a part.
that degree. It's just like fucking. I just can't wrap my head around it.
But isn't it also like, it's a little bit like the same with like white people kind of, right? Like it's the fear of a
Yeah, with white people,
powerlessness.
yeah, but I could link that. I could trace that back to like imperialism, using scripture as a way to justify slavery or to justify white supremacy, systematic injustices and the tweaking of judicial systems. Like I can see how a white person of 2020 can still have these hugely skewed and warped ideas about their place in culture or in, I don't want to say hierarchy, but you know, in the ideas of some sort of cultural, racial hierarchy. And I guess what you're saying, Zach, is perhaps that is what it is. It's like hyper masculinity or
like fragile masculinity.
Yeah, very. And they're triggered by somebody else who, in their perception, like, you know, threatens their own masculinity. You know what I mean? Like and I feel like the church has a lot to do with that.
It does. I was gonna say, like,
I'm a religious person, so yeah, that church can.
Organized religion is a common thread on both sides of it. Like, white supremacy definitely has been upholded, you know, and religion has been used as a tool to just condition a lot of
people in line. To keep people in line, you know?
On both sides of the fence. Like, that conditioning is imprinted on Black and brown folks. That's like internalized. Like, we see it. It is imprinted in white folks who just feel, you know, so entitled to kind of navigate the space in the way that they can in our world. And also with men, I mean, especially white men, but all men in this sense, like cisgender men, definitely, you know, just those gender roles that are also like found in like the Bible and like Abrahamic religion, like all of that, I feel like is tied, you know, there's like a common thread in that.
Yeah.
I do feel you, right? In general, you just like, what would drive you to want to roll up on someone you don't know,
right?
Kill them. Like I've never had. Maybe I feel furious, but I've never felt that. Like I've never felt the need to like lunge across the street and beat someone to death. Like no, I've never had that urge. You know what I mean? Like
that is a lot of fucking anger.
Yeah, like I do feel you, like as far as your humanity, but that's the thing. To Zach's point is like, it's fragile. The Black man is in a very fragile place. Yeah. You know, so there is something to that, but I feel you too. It's like, what makes you want to, you know, fatally harm someone? That's a lot.
Yeah.
What makes someone want to like burn a church down? Like it's
Right.
all fragility like across the board, you know?
Yeah. Right.
Um, okay. That was
Yeah.
beautiful.
I know. I was like,
Thank
we
you
can.
for going there. So yeah, I mean, I guess I definitely want to shed a light on just, you know, the creative dynamic energy that you all possess and you all contribute, you know, to our world and community. Can you speak a little bit about that? I mean, who would like to go first? Talk about their excellence.
For what?
Their excellence. Talk about your excellence.
Oh, shit, I thought you said talk about your exes. It was like,
That's another conversation. That's the after party.
Right.
Well, I'm happy to begin because it includes Zachary. And Zach and I are working on, and also our friend, as you, friends of you all too, Billy Morgan, are working on a collaborative project that is both performative and then also is in correlation to a solo show that I'm going to have at the Bronx Museum. So we're at the early stages of um, putting this 5 performance piece of work together. Zach is choreographing and really creating, well, not really, but he's creating all the movement for these 5 pieces. So I'm excited. It's something that
That Wardell's going to be moving in with me.
yes, I'm gonna be really.
I gotta drink to that.
Right.
To work on a project that's really collaborative, and it's a lot that. Yeah, I brought the initial idea to these 2 other creators, to Billy and to Zach, but I'm extremely dependent and looking to them to really develop and mature this project so that it's something far greater than my initial idea. So that's what I'm like really excited about at present.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah. Zach has me a little nervous though about this movement. I'm more of like shoulder, wine and grind type of thing. Zach is that whole body. We're using everything.
Yeah.
Like,
it actually really excites me to like put movement on like the like untrained body or like not technically trained mover. There's a lot of excitement for that into me, so I'm really excited about it. But I actually was just looking at this talk. It's on YouTube. It's between the No Name, the rapper, and Boots Riley, and I think it's called it's an uprising, and they're talking about a lot of the shit that we're talking about here today. But No Name basically said something that really spoke to me about her practice being a rapper, and how she's like this like very like radical feminist now, and has this her own book club where she's like educating a lot of people on the Black experience, especially in America. And they were asking her how she navigates her practice through basically white supremacy, like being in a white bubble, knowing that your audience is predominantly white. And as an emerging like artist, I agree with her in the sense that she was saying that usually she uses her practice as this escapism from what's probably going on like with current issues and so forth. And I was like realizing that most of my work is like very therapeutic in the sense that I'm like bringing some people together, and we're usually sharing like lived experiences with like homophobia or growing up Black or whatever it may be, and like kind of like taking refuge in each other's stories. And healing through that, knowing that, you know, we're not alone in it. But outside of that, I'm just like, I was just realizing that I haven't really made, you know, a work that I would just like really like saw something beautiful like a flower or something and made a piece about that. Like I feel like a lot of my work has been, you know, very deep, and I enjoy that, but it's just like it becomes very dark. It puts me in a dark place constantly. So I'm really just trying to navigate how I just the balance of that, you know, and not letting the work consume me mentally. Yeah. And having a different balance in that. Like, I don't know, because I've never really thought of my work as like an escapism, but it would be really nice to have that. And I feel like once you're at a certain level, artists, you know, can take that liberty. But for me right now, it just feels like I'm having to prove myself so like current with like my texts and, you know, like the meanings behind my practice, which is important to have. But it's like also I'm like, it would really be nice to not go to that place every time I perform. So that's one thing that I've just been. Say that again.
You may not be the type of person who can just make a piece about, oh, that rose was so, that red and that rose was so pretty. Let me make a movement piece about that pretty old red. You may not. You may be the type of artist who, you know, has to always or feels the need to speak about things that are a bit more dense and complicated.
Yeah, and I also like across the board, I am grateful for the platform, no matter what, usually. But it was just like it just would be nice to have the liberty to have that type of work come out of me.
You gotta do it with April and I. Me and April, what we do.
Right.
Watch an episode of Golden Girls.
Listen, Golden Girls all day, all night. Just release them like that. Really, you need an alter ego, Zach. You need to be Blanche Devereaux by now.
Zach is Blanche Devereaux.
I am. I love her. Great. The best. Love it.
I tap into Tracy Chambers.
What did you say, Tracy?
I tap into Tracy Chambers. Y'all know Tracy Chambers?
Who's that?
Mahogany.
Mahogany, the movie?
Yeah, the movie.
I'll take that.
Ross one.
Yeah. What was the character's name?
Tracy Chambers.
Oh, right.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
You're giving us Mahogany tonight.
I know, right? You are actually telling her the whole.
Who's calling?
Excuse me, sorry. I didn't know that was going to happen.
Somebody's mom.
It's all good. Well, Miss Mahogany, aka Tracy Chambers, how are you living and feeling and creative, and you know, how are your creative juices flowing during this?
They weren't for a long time.
They weren't? That's okay. Listen.
I had like a good section of time where like nothing was really, I didn't do much of, if I could make the bed, take a shower, like open the curtains and eat a meal, that was a fantastic day.
Right.
Like there was a point in time where it was like, that's gotta be good enough for today.
Yeah.
Right. I think I've moved past that. So I too have an LLC. So just thinking about how to put on my business hat more, which sounds like it's not creative, but that's not true, because then I have to make more work.
Yeah.
For the LLC part, the business part to work. So just thinking about more of like a business structure. And I had this idea. I didn't have the idea. I want to bring this up though. I read something about this baseball player, and he played in Boston, and he said it was so racist that like children would be calling him nigger from the stands, you know, and their parents were sitting right next to him, and no one really said or did anything because it's just this understood kind of culture. And he, you know, once his contract was up, he put it in his contract that he was about to get traded or something, but he put it in his contract that he would never play for Boston ever again. Because he just was like, I don't want to be a part of this. I don't want to be subjected to this. I don't want to work for an organization that will allow this to happen to me as an employee of that organization. And I just thought that was such a savvy, strategic move to use the contract as a bit of a weapon, you know, to protect yourself and your interests. That's what they're for. It's to protect your interests. And so I started to think more about how freelancers in particular, and then maybe employees, if you get a contract or something, how to start to use the contract in a more strategic way to get your needs met, and maybe needs that are not financial, right? If you need a Wednesday off to go, or, you know, to go to to go see your therapist or whatever, you know, like put things in your contract that will help you maintain, you know, a better sense of like well-being.
Right.
So I'm cooking up something kind of, and I said, well, how could I use it? And so I was thinking of putting a clause in the contract that I would have to be invited to certain events that would give me access to people and spaces I normally would not have access to.
That's smart.
Sometimes relationships are worth more than money. You know, like if you're in the right kind of cultivating the right relationships, the money will come, you know? So I think that's something for people to look into, using the contract in your favor. Because I know that a lot of people don't negotiate. So I think that moving forward, because I was trying to think of strategies and stuff like that, and I was like, that guy, what he did about never having to play in Boston, that was very strategic. That was a very smart move in his best interest.
Right.
So stuff like I'm more in a businessy space. I'm trying to figure out how to be a businesswoman.
Must be creative. You know, I never believed in the whole starving artist, that whole kind of like expression. Like I like my YSL boots. I like my
We want coins.
I need motherfucking coins.
Yeah.
So I think it's smart, and I always try to encourage when I'm in the classroom to encourage like the grad students to think about the other side of being an artist, which is, yeah, you need an LLC, you need to have some sort of like business understanding. So it's, yeah, I mean, you're like right on, Jules, to think about like how to came this contract. I can use the contract as,
it was my first time doing my taxes, and I was like, oh shoot, I have a business. I gotta get this together. Like the tax game got real. I was like, okay.
Like the tax is real.
Hell yeah, real. And it pushed me to say like, okay, I have to kind of function differently and think about this differently and work in a strategic way. So yeah, that's where my head got.
The taxes will get you together for sure.
Yeah, real.
Thank God for that extension.
I was so unprepared.
Totally not prepared.
You're not prepared for what?
Taxes.
He said thank God for the extension, because I was like, thank God, because I was not ready for that. April 15, I was way behind on that. So now it's all cleared up. Everything is good, but I had to really comb through some kinks. It was my first time doing it as an LLC.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. That's a moment.
Well,
I mean, you know.
Thank you.
Well, on that note, you guys, I will leave us asking the question of, what does Juneteenth mean to you? What does it mean to us? And knowing that, you know, like a lot of people don't even know what Juneteenth is, right? And I'm not even like saying that with like shade or judgment, because our school systems and it just wasn't, I mean, I know for me, like growing up, that was not, people weren't talking about Juneteenth, you know, and like informing us.
I heard of Juneteenth like as a holiday like 2 years ago. I heard of Juneteenth as the Ralph Ellison work many years ago. But as a sort of celebratory thing, that just came on my radar.
Yeah. Wait, what did you say, Zach?
It wasn't a celebratory thing either from
No.
ever since I was growing up. I
Sure.
Yeah,
mean,
it's only been the last like handful of years where it's really been kind of like a part of my like consciousness. But you never heard or learned about it in school. Um, I mean, it's sad to say that I don't really have any type of sentimental kind of investment. Like, well, I know the importance of the day,
Yeah.
but I most likely, but I also don't really celebrate holidays. But I most likely probably won't take a pause to celebrate the day or to celebrate the history of the day. But I also don't celebrate Jesus' birthday.
Yeah, but I mean, you don't have to, I don't know. I don't feel like you have to celebrate something means that you
Sure.
have to do it on the day necessarily.
Right.
You can
Yeah.
just have like an awareness, like ongoingly or just at some point, I feel like us all being here and doing what we're doing is the celebration of Juneteenth and liberation in so many ways,
When I think of Juneteenth, I think, I don't want to get too weepy, but I think like we are the hopes and dreams of the slave. Like imagine
Yes.
1619 where you were like not allowed to read, and like we in your office just now we saw a whole wall full of books.
Yeah.
That is the win, like as small or big as it may be. Like I was just watching when I'm home working, I'll put on like white noise, if you will. And so the white noise today was Henry Louis Gates' Finding Your Roots.
Yes.
And so he was doing Jeff Canada, and I used to work at Harlem Children's Zone. So I was just like, oh, well, let me see what the story is about or whatever. And so he goes back or whatnot. And they talk about how many people died en route, right? So like there are some generations of people that got cut. They didn't even get to the land, So the fact that we've all made it so many versions of, ourselves, our families, our lives, generations. I mean, that's a win considering all the odds.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think now listening to you talk, Jules, is that perhaps the reason why I don't give it more the date more of a pause, because I feel like we are constantly like having a Juneteenth. Like
Yeah.
every day, like when I talk to my father, sometimes I speak to him pretty regularly. I'm like, this man used to pick cotton. And so it's to understand that he used to pick cotton. Now he is where he is now, and I am where I am now, and I have that consideration maybe twice a day at minimum. So I feel like we are always kind of are celebrating and remembering our ancestors and lineage from slavery to where we are now. Because if you really think about it, I mean, it's really not that far. It's really not that long ago. Civil rights is not that long ago. Martin Luther King was killed in 1968, and then he had the disco in the 70s. So it's like how time and history and the trajectory of people of color it's just it's really short when you begin to think about humanity. But I think about liberation, the liberation of brown people, both in the larger kind of conversation, and then also as it relates to my family. I kind of consider that every day.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, I look at it as like an annual reminder of how far we still have to go. You know what I mean? Like, yes, I acknowledge like that we came this far, but I just feel like Black people are still enslaved systematically in so many other ways other than just having this, paper from a white person that said, I owned you. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many other ways that I feel like we still have to, like, the work still has to be done. We still have to dismantle, you know what I mean? It's just like an annual reminder and acknowledgement of where we come from, but like that there's still so much to unpack.
Yeah.
But I really have never actually celebrated it in like a celebratory way. But I feel like, especially this year with everything going on, it's going to be quite different.
Yeah, it definitely has a different kind of.
Yeah, it's like it's carrying a little bit more weight than before to me. But yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna start to be a thing.
Right back. I gotta get
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah.
It's gonna be like a new version of Kwanzaa or something. Like it's gonna start to be a thing. Like like Kwanzaa has a cultural footprint. I think this will also be like a new cultural footprint.
Yep.
And do like the Emancipation Proclamation. I was, just thinking about that too, because I've been reading this Black queer scholar. His name is Calvin L. Warren. And he has like an article that I've been reading in reference to the work that me and Wardell are working on. But I think it's really important to just read. There's an article, it's called Black Nihilism and the Politics of Hope. And then he made that into a book, which is called Ontological Terror, Blackness, Nihilism, and Emancipation. And I feel like it will be a really good read for Juneteenth if anyone wanted to like read about what emancipation actually is for Black people. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. Well, all right, y'all. I guess
All right.
this was amazing. It was enriching. It was necessary. Yeah. I'm a little tips from my cocktail. I don't know about you.
Dang.
I've been drinking it. It's like each sip out of this straw is like a big, it's a big sip.
Gulp. It's a gulp.
I've been drinking.
Yeah, I've been drinking, exactly. Well, Wardell.
That's about as much as I'm going to do.
That's your body roll. That's your move.
Wait
That's a body roll.
Well,
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you guys who are watching us, tuning in, happy Juneteenth. And we will be transitioning to Instagram Live, where the after party will continue with myself and Tega Kalor. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.